and the discussion that was had at that time. I had a discussion with the testifier then about the use of technology with the Coast Guard in terms of interdictions on drugs and weapons. He talked quite a bit about unmanned aerial systems and their relationship with other law enforcement entities. What would be the use and the efficacy of using UUVs as well as USVs in this area? Is that a possibility?
Sure. USVs, which is my area of expertise, I can tell you would lend itself tremendously. For example, we're now converting a 38-foot patrol craft to optionally unmanned that can stay and loiter offshore for weeks at a time, running a radar, looking for vessels that need to be investigated. So this vessel and the data on board would be monitored back at a control center on shore or even on a Coast Guard cutter. And so if the Coast Guard decides that they want to investigate, they can dispatch that vessel out and be able to interrogate it via the satellite base through the link to the VHF radio and actually talk to that vessel, or if they can't communicate that way, through a hailer and then over the satellite link. And if necessary, they can even, as I mentioned in my testimony, deploy a net system that entangles in the prop that will stop that vessel until the Coast Guard can reach them and investigate that situation.
Interesting, really great, thank you. I had a second question for Admiral White. This was with regard to the investment that's being made. Do you happen to have any statistics or information that speaks to the amount of venture capital that is being invested in the types of technology that you discussed in various blue technology and its growth?
I do not have those at my fingertips, ma'am. I apologize, but I will get an analysis of that for you and get it back.
Would you say that the magnitude of that is how much less that is than space or other areas, or what are the ways that we can get VC funding into this area?
I'll go back to the comments by one of my cohorts on this panel, is that I think that it is absolutely, there is an order of magnitude difference in the investment that we were making in exploring space and trying to understand what's going on in oceans on planets that we will never live on for many generations at least, whereas we need to pay more attention to the own ocean and our own inner space that we have here. It is an order of magnitude difference in terms of technology.
Is there a role that Congress can play in incentivizing or getting the private sector and these venture capital groups, private equity groups, to be engaged in this?
I think working across the various committees between your committee, looking at the science committee, all the actual committees, and focusing and really trying to balance what's really important to our population right now. And the maritime and maritime transportation, maritime safety and security environment has to be paramount for the reasons that we've all talked about. And I just believe you can help elevate sort of the understanding, not just by the folks here in D.C., but by our population writ large. We all love space. We all want to be Captain Kirk, which means it's either a Navy or a Coast Guard.
Or Uhuru in some of our instances.
Even better. But as we do that, we need to understand that it's a change in perception of that. It's a level of importance, and that's through ocean literacy and ocean understanding and the STEM, ocean STEM that I talked about, which would drive education of the next generation of our maritime nation. We should be vested in ocean STEM as a mandate to drive this type of discourse going forward, ma'am. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And that actually leads to my second question I had, and we talked about the private sector. I wanted to talk about education. The Virgin Islands has one of the premier maritime or marine biology programs. But in other areas related to ocean STEM, I think that there's a dearth of degree options, of areas that young people can go into. Particularly, my question was, are there ways that we've tried to increase communities of color or other minorities, African American, people of color, Latinos, in this area? And what are the ways that we can drive interest for individuals who live on the coast, communities of color that are tremendously affected by food insecurities, climate change that is affected by the oceans. Does anyone on the panel have any thoughts, please?
First, to your first question, there is not one blue tech investment fund in the United States today. There is not one. There are a number of people focused on space, but there's not one venture fund in the United States that's really focused on blue tech. We're doing our third year as part of Blue Tech Week, a Blue Tech Pitch Fest, and we are reaching around the United States. So I think there are roles where the SBA and other agencies could try and help fund organizations that would invest in blue tech companies. Related to education, we this year have a major effort in particular to reach out to underserved communities. In a place like San Diego, where the cost of housing is very high, it's very hard to bring somebody in and technical workers. So we believe that we're going to have to grow our own entrepreneurs and our own technical workers. So we have started a internship program with heavy emphasis on underserved communities. We got some funding from a local foundation. We have just started an immersion program. It'll be a pilot program. This year we'll do 2 weeks. We also started a Blue STEM. We used to call it Ocean STEM, but we want to be more comprehensive than that. So we're talking Blue STEM with the San Diego Unified School District. We've picked a middle school and a high school. We're creating an academy and a workforce pathway. We're working with our workforce development agency, with all of our universities to really start at the earliest levels. And once we can create a replicable model, we plan to put it all across San Diego County and then across the country. So it's something that we are spending a lot of time on, is this whole component of education. We know it's critically important to bring females and other underserved communities into this.
Mr. Coyle?
Can I get back to your investment question? I think there, as Mr. Jones mentioned about, there's no blue tech fund. I think that's one avenue in terms of whether it's sovereign wealth management, asset management, private equity, venture capital. There's huge opportunity on that. I was just out at a conference in Santa Monica about what's being done in that regard in the Middle East. I was just at a conference 2 weeks ago at Yale University on the impact investment side, which is looking at how do you make profit and do good in the same equation. And if you look at the chairman of BlackRock, I think sending the CEOs letters about maybe a month ago, that their portfolio companies not only have to make profit, but actually have to make an impact. That is fundamental. When you've got one of the biggest asset management companies in the world, you've got the investment community. There were plenty of Wall Streeters that were there, banks that are now fundamentally looking at this as not as just donating to a nonprofit, is how do we use technology to return profit and make societal difference. That's fundamental. That's not happened in the investment community. And so I think there's a role that government can play incentivizing the investment community to pay more attention to emerging blue technology.
Okay. Yes.
For 21 years, there's been the National Ocean Sciences Bowl, started by Admiral Watkins again. It's a high school ocean quiz bowl competition. It brings together multi-regions across states around the country, not just coastal, but Idaho and Colorado. And this is a high school quiz bowl that unfortunately is not being utilized to its full potential today. It was actually designed to be run by a combination of resources from multiple federal ocean agencies under the NOP Act originally. This is an opportunity to work with aquariums in inner cities and underrepresented populations to grow not just at the high school, but even the middle school level, and really use the ocean, because the aquariums in parks, ocean attracts people. They want to engage in understanding it. We have a great opportunity through this program and other programs being run through the education partnerships and through other agencies. Not enough attention is being paid to this, in my opinion, writ large, and it will be a great opportunity to ask some hard questions of the agency. You've got tools out there. Why are you not utilizing them to their fullest potential?
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask these questions. And Mr. Jones, I think that the island of St. John, where we're actually about to rebuild our school, would be a great place for you to try another pilot out for these young people. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the gentle lady. If there's no further questions, I thank all the witnesses for their testimony, the members for their participation. The subcommittee is adjourned.